Okay, so I think I will get going then. Welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar being jointly led by SUMS Consulting and Bisk Education. My name is Marian Hutchins and I'm Head of Marketing and Communications for SUMS Consulting. And my role today really is just to welcome you to today's webinar, just go over a few housekeeping items with you, tell you a little bit about SUMS Consulting, and then hand you over to our panel of very capable and expert speakers to take you through today's session, which is all about engaging students and facilitating compelling online classes. So for those of you who may not yet be old hat at Zoom, you will see a few different buttons at the bottom of your screen. For some of you, it may be along the side, but you'll notice that your camera has been turned off and you have been muted throughout the session of the webinar. You will see there's a Q&A function. We would very much welcome your questions throughout the course of the webinar, and then our panel today will do their best to answer all of those during the Q&A session at the end. Please be aware though, if you see a question on there that you really like and want answered, you can give it a thumbs up and then that will move it up the priority list. So please again, pop things in there as the session is ongoing. Today's session will be recorded and you will receive a copy of the slides and any other material that we need to share with you following the webinar. And so with that, I just wanted to give you a bit of information about SUMS. So if we just hop along a little bit. SUMS Consulting, I know many of the people on today's call will already be familiar with us, but SUMS Consulting is part of a larger group that supports universities across the UK. Our membership makes up roughly a quarter of the student and staff population in the UK, and we've been supporting universities across all areas of professional services for about the last 50 years. So real specialists in higher education, and that's why we felt this was a really good partnership with Bisk Education to embark on with these webinars. I've just in the next slide highlighted a few of our recent members and clients. So again, working with universities in sort of Russell Group, research intensive universities, teaching focused universities, a wide range of different types of institutions, and some of our international colleagues at universities as well. So before I pass over to our speakers who are here to get into the exciting stuff with you, we just wanted to ask the audience a quick couple of questions, and they're really about how you feel in terms of preparedness for online learning. So let's see if the technology is with us here and if we can launch this poll. So you should see a poll up in front of you now. There should be two questions. One of them is asking you how prepared you feel at your institution to deliver online classes as opposed to in-person classes. And the second question is looking at whether or not you feel your university has given you sufficient resources and training to be able to make that transition appropriately. So if you just take a few seconds and fill those in for us. Just give you a minute. Usually people, I think, have a real sort of clear sense of whether or not they feel prepared for this type of thing. And I know universities are really sort of along the maturity spectrum in terms of how many have really ramped up training and resources for staff, and how many are sort of finding it a bit more of a struggle to get up to speed with all of that. So how are we doing there, Clinton? Have we had some responses in? Okay, so hoping everyone has had a chance to vote. So with that then, it's really...
Yeah, we have, sorry, we have 21, so 75%
okay.
have voted. Can you see the results there?
I can't see them on my end, so I'll leave it to you to share the exciting results.
Okay, hold on, let me end the poll. My mouse will cooperate. All right, sharing results.
Okay, those? So yeah, so I don't know if all of our delegates can see that, but really, perhaps not unexpectedly, you know, people are feeling sort of in the middle in terms of, you know, I'm adequately prepared, I'm not feeling super prepared, but it looks like most people have a sense that there's some activity that's been undertaken to help them move to online teaching. And again, you know, it's sort of a bell curve with the second question as well, around most people feeling there's sort of a moderate amount of resources and training available. Probably a few institutions that are really excelling in this area, and a few, again, that are you know, maybe lagging behind a bit. But good to see that nobody's feeling a total lack of resources and support from the university. So that's excellent. So with that, and to kind of set the scene for the webinar, it's my pleasure really to introduce you to today's speakers. So we have four panelists with us. We have Dr. Jennifer King, Academic Program Director at Bisk. We have Dr. Tealia DeBerry, Senior Manager of Learning Technology and Engagement at Bisk. Dr. Keith Niblett, Assistant Director, Executive Education at Michigan State University, and our own Nick Skelton, Associate Consultant at SUMS Consulting. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Jen.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. I'm coming to you from sunny Tampa, Florida on the East Coast of the United States. And it's a pleasure to be with you. I am, as Marion mentioned, the Academic Program Director for Bisk Education. And it's pretty amazing when you think about it, because we are celebrating our 50th year in distance education. And that's incredible to me. Really, if you think about it, 50 years ago when Nathan Bisk started this company, he really was on the cutting edge of online before it was cool to go online, right? And so since 1971, we've had an opportunity to work with over 15 university partners. We're growing even today as everyone is quickly moving online. We work with both domestic and international partners. Since 1971, we've developed over 1,500 courses. We've developed over 200 degree programs, 300 certificate programs, and we've touched about 1.5 million different students across the world, really. And it's just been an exciting journey. Part of that journey actually includes Michigan State University, and I'm joined here with my great friend, Keith Niblett. He and I have been in course development for quite some time. The Bisk partnership with MSU has been phenomenal. Keith, tell us a little bit about MSU and what you do there.
Well, I think we can see all the stats, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, everybody, actually. You can see all the stats in front of you. And the one thing I was going to add to what I was talking about last week, us being a part of the Big Ten network, us being the first land-grant institution, us having a mega-sized campus, because it was given to us by Abraham Lincoln. But the big difference moving from Cranfield to the United States, as I did 17 years ago, was that I suddenly realized how important sport was to any of the mega colleges. So we do have a dedicated field where we play American football 10 times a year. That's an 80,000-seater stadium. We have a 20,000-seater basketball stadium, and we have 2 dedicated baseball stadiums as well. Plus, of course, we have an indoor ice hockey arena. Now, it's astounding because it's so different, and I couldn't believe it when I first came to the United States. But I suddenly realized, probably 2 or 3 years in, that this is all a part of the brand building. And the majority of our undergrad students are attracted to us because of the success of our basketball teams and football teams. And I think that is so different from anything that I'd experienced in Europe.
That's excellent. And when you think about it, all of those great experiences, Keith, right? That's what makes the campus life experience so rich and so real. That's why students want to come to campus. They want to be face-to-face. They want to be in the buildings. They want to go to the football games and the baseball games, and they want to enjoy ice hockey even. And that is the challenge I think we're facing right now with COVID. We know that just a few, not 100% of our students are going to come back. The vast majority are either choosing to go online because they were given a choice by their university, or they're electing, or the college is elected to just be online, at least for, the near future. And so what we want to talk about today is, as we're thinking about the fact that we are moving online, many of us have never done this before. Tealia and I are here to talk to you, and Keith are here to talk to you about what we would consider best practices for engaging learners, in particular, the online learner. Today we're actually going to talk about the barriers to engagement. And this is a very important topic because I want you all to remember that many of your students, whether they're undergraduate or postgraduate students, they are, as you know, thinking about moving online. They are going to be limited by probably 3 or 4 key things: motivation and time management, technology limitations, and isolation. And what we wanted to do today, in our last webinar, in our very last webinar, we ended our webinar discussing the differences between undergrads and postgraduates. So we're going to go through some of these barriers to engagement, how the undergraduate would approach these barriers versus the postgraduate student. So the first barrier to engagement that we've discovered in our history at Bisk is motivation and time management. Quite frankly, the undergraduate, their motivation is fun. They just want to enjoy their experience. They've been on their thumbs all summer, right? And they really want to continue that experience, that socialization, and that interaction with their peers. And so motivation for them, I like to think of their motivation as edutainment. That's my term for it. They want education, but they want to be entertained, and that is just the reality for the undergraduate. Their time management challenge is that they're trying to fit life into school, right? So their life is friends and fun. How do I fit that into school? Versus the postgraduate, they're focused on their professions and their family. They are already driven by the clock. They are working against the clock and always on some kind of schedule. They're trying to fit school into life. That is their time management challenge. How do I fit homework assignments? How do I fit group projects? And when do I meet with my group if I'm a professional and if I'm a parent and I have to do this in the evening? One of the things that Tealia uses, which is very helpful, is that check-in email. And Tealia, tell us about that. How is that used to kind of anchor those students to the course?
When you are working in a learning management system, you can see from the analytics page typically who has been logging into the course and who hasn't. So unlike face-to-face classes where you meet with your students and you see them constantly and they have a sort of cadence of accountability throughout the course, when courses are online, they don't necessarily have that. So sending a check-in email using the analytics to see who hasn't been logging in. If you notice that some students are posting assignments late or not posting them at all, sending a check-in email is a great way to motivate them and to help them sort of eliminate that time management issue, or at least let them know that you're paying attention to whether or not they're in the course. So another thing that I do and that I have our professors do is post reminders about assignments. So you can do that in the announcements area of your course. And another thing is to hold live sessions. So if you notice that your students are kind of lagging when it comes to logging in, holding live sessions and allowing everyone to kind of get together, and even if it's just to ask questions about the content, or just to do a quick group activity together, this sort of thing will give them that sense of community that they might be lacking and that sense of accountability to the class.
I was muted, forgive me. That's, yep, that's excellent information. Another barrier too that Tealia and I have discovered is the technology limitations that we often face when we move online. And the assumption, I think, for the undergraduate student is that they're worried about going online. And I find that that's actually not the case. In the US, I could tell you that most of our students have been using an LMS, a learning management system, probably since their primary school years. So they've been very comfortable grabbing information from an LMS, finding out what their grades are, their assignments, even conversing with their professor through email, through a learning management system. So I think the undergrads are comfortable with the learning management system, but they do find themselves having challenges with how do you bring learning, how do they learn through this new interface when it's supposed to be a college experience? Because these undergrads, as Keith was saying, you know, they want to come on campus, they want to be face-to-face. That's not going to happen. How do they get that college experience? How do they get that the interaction with their professors? How do they enjoy student life and all of those things if they are online? That's the challenge for the undergrad. With the postgraduate student, their technology limitations are very true. They are usually not very tech savvy, and you have to definitely equip them with resources. And Tealia is going to talk about that. Equip them with resources to make sure that they're comfortable using the tech tools of the learning management system.
Sure. One of the things that you can do to prepare for teaching online is knowing the resources that are available to you and to your students for the learning management system. So if you're working in Moodle or Blackboard or Canvas or one of the LMSs, most LMSs have really robust resources, videos, walkthroughs, all of that sort of stuff that you can use to get to know the learning management system. Knowing what's available to the students, because most LMSs like Moodle or Canvas will have a student view and a faculty view. So what you see, especially in Canvas, might not be exactly what your students see. So knowing the resources for them, becoming familiar with Moodle from both perspectives, that's with Moodle or Canvas or Blackboard from both perspectives is great, because that way if your students have a quick question, you don't always want to have to send them to a technical support area, because that can become frustrating, and then that becomes a barrier to persistence in online. So the more familiar you are, the better you can assist your students with the small things. Also, once you know a little bit about the learning management system, you can add instructions. When I was teaching at the University of Tampa, I found that all of my students were mostly 18-year-old traditional college students, and a lot of them had never uploaded a file before, which I was surprised by. But they were so used to iPads and cell phones and that sort of thing that they hadn't necessarily used an actual computer before. So I would add instructions for how to upload files.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, with the mobile devices, that is something I didn't even think about, Tealia. And that is that most of our students, even the both undergraduate and graduate, they are very mobile friendly users, right? In terms of accessing information on a regular basis. So they're most likely not even using a laptop or a desktop computer. Very often they're trying to get to their coursework, that learning management system, through their phone or their iPad. So as Tealia was saying, just thinking about that and making sure that you're mobile ready in your courses, in your online courses, to meet the needs of that type of learner as well. The next barrier is isolation, and this is a huge one in online because you are obviously remote, and we've taken the face-to-face instructor-led on-site aspect of learning away from our students when we've moved online. And isolation is huge because, as I said before with the undergraduate, they were expecting, especially as freshmen, they were expecting to come to campus and have this great college experience. Now they have to find ways to interact and to come out of their hermit lifestyle, their cave lifestyle, right? By doing things online with their instructor or with their classmates. Same with the postgraduates. I think the opposite is true for the grad students. They actually like isolation. They just want to bury themselves in a cave. They just want to know, what do I need to do to get my A? I have to raise my kids. I've got to go to work in the morning. I'm going to bury myself in my work. And so you have to really pull that graduate student out of that cave to get them to think beyond their assignment. And Tealia, talk to us about group projects in particular, because I think for graduate students, that is their biggest fear, is that you're going to make us work online with people I don't know in a group setting. How is that going to work?
I think Keith spoke about this a little bit last week, and how he allows them to choose their own groups, which I think is a great idea. But group projects online are a little bit different from group projects in a face-to-face class. They seem a little bit intimidating, but if you have the correct tools, like if you use Google Docs and things, that areas where students can collaborate, even having students meet in their own Zoom sessions, it's actually a little bit easier online than it is in a traditional face-to-face classroom, because the students would have to, in a face-to-face classroom, they'd have to figure out where they would meet and what time works for everybody, where they can actually do group projects more asynchronously online or synchronously if that works for them. And then you don't have the barrier of everyone being dispersed from in other locations. So another thing, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's what you were going to say, is the live session and the importance of facilitating a live session for online learners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even just doing an introductory session, if you don't want to hold live sessions throughout the course, letting everybody get to know each other and interact. And I mentioned on the previous slide, holding sessions for, Q&A or the group projects, using something like Zoom to do a breakout rooms for the different groups is always a good idea as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the next barrier in online learning is instructor presence. And Keith is going to talk a lot about this in a few minutes. I focus on Keith because he is definitely the life of the online course, in my opinion, as he was the life in his face-to-face on-ground courses. He loves to lecture, he loves to talk, he loves to present, and he's fantastic at it. How then do you translate those gifts and those skills that you bring to your course? How do you bring that into the online setting? And your undergraduates want that instructor presence because, again, it's part of that college experience. They want to know that there's really an adult in the room, if you will, and that there's someone that cares about their learning experience. For the graduate student, the instructor presence is a little different. They want to know who you are professionally, and they want to know how this course and how you as an instructor are going to help them professionally to network and to get ahead in their career. They are looking for that type of connection with the professor. So Tealia, talk real quickly, because I know Keith is really going to nail this a little bit later, personal, instructional, and social presence. What does that mean?
Personal presence is letting your students know who are you as a person. They want to know that there's a real live human behind the computer screen, and that person is invested in them, in their academic success. So when I think about instructor presence, I think about leveraging the tools within the learning management system to make sure that you're active in the course, at least from your students' perspective. So sending out welcome emails and announcements, creating an introduction discussion, that's always a great idea to do. We do that as a best practice. So establishing your personal presence that way, letting them know some details about like why you're interested in the course, why you're, who you are as a person. And then instructional presence, why are you an expert? Fill out your profile, share your LinkedIn information, send out a welcome email, telling them a little bit about yourself and your academic background. Do you have books and papers published? Maybe they want to see some of that. And just letting them know, where you went to school, what you focused on. And then when it comes to social presence, that's fostering that online community. That's addressing that barrier to retention that is isolation. So again, group work, breakout sessions in your Zoom session, and being present in the discussion board and making sure that you're adding to the conversation and letting the students work through all of the materials in that way.
Mm-hmm. So we have 4 slides. We're just going to go through these really, really quickly for the sake of time, because we're actually going to see a lot of this play out in one of Keith's courses that we collaborated on, Bisk and MSU. But in terms of breaking through the barriers of engagement, welcome emails is one of our tools, one of the things you can do to make sure that you've engaged your students. You can bring them into your course and introduce them to each other and to the instructor. The next one would be online discussions. You're going to see, announcements. You're going to see announcements utilized in the learning management system, like Tealia was saying earlier, leverage the tools that the LMS automatically gives you. You don't have to go out and invent a tool. It's probably already there for you in the learning management system. And announcements is a quick way to keep everybody on the same page on a weekly basis. The next tool would be online discussions. You're going to see online discussions leveraged in Keith's course in a few minutes. A fantastic way to just make sure that people have an opportunity to interact with one another. And you can also use this as a way to encourage students to apply what they've learned through a discussion board. And the last tool would be, as Tealia was saying, synchronous sessions using Zoom or some online meeting tool to bring everybody together at a common meeting time, have them either present through Zoom using screen share, or having them listen to yourself talk or lecture, if you will, present large group information that brings everybody together as a unit at a single time and point and place. And so with that, we're going to go on to talk real quick about the development process. At Bisk, we have a 3-step development process, and we implemented this with MSU as well. Analysis and design is our first phase of development. We move into course development when we develop, actually do the course build in a learning management system. And then we have that last step, which is approval and delivery, where we wrap up the course and we look at unit testing and quality assurance. And I bring up the development process because as you think about barriers of engagement, we have to address those barriers as we begin to develop our courses in the learning management system. So on the next slide, you'll see that one of the things we've implemented at Bisk is what I call the accelerated timeline. Typically, in the pre-COVID world of course development, we were looking at a 16-week development cycle. Because schools, institutions, colleges are moving online so quickly, we have to move fast, right? And so we are migrating courses, face-to-face courses, and bringing all of that content online very fast. This slide shows you an example of an 8-week development timeline. So we have literally accelerated our development process across our partnerships, gone from the 16-week cycle down to 8 weeks. And this is for courses that already have existing content, right? That we're just quickly migrating online. There is a process for that. And at every stage, we are thinking about these barriers of engagement. We're going to share with you right now, as Tealia, we're going to share one of Keith's courses. And this is a course that Keith and I have co-labored, co-collaborated on. It is MGTC 202. Tealia is going to bring that up, and there's my good friend on the home page of that course, Keith Niblett. Keith, tell us a little bit about this course, and then we're going to have Tealia scroll through, and as you're kind of telling our audience why we made certain decisions and how we address those barriers to engagement in development.
Yeah, this course we researched very carefully, first of all, to discover what the audience might be. And so this course is very much designed for what I prefer to call first-time managers. These could be, in terms of a graduate setting, very involved with joining a workforce and then getting, for the first time, that supervisory role, that team leader role. And often these graduates have not got a background in leadership or management, but they are attracted to further education in leadership and management, whether it be in a non-degree or indeed in a degree format. And we do have a master's degree called Strategy, Leadership and Management, so which they can take fully online. So this course is designed specifically for them, the first-time manager. We know that at the moment there is a massive transference between baby boomers to giving over the first-line management jobs to millennials, and now in America, Gen Z, or Gen Z, as they say in America. And so the whole of this was designed for them. Now, some of these theories they might have even hit in high school, but they've never been able to practice them before. And so we thought it was really, really important that we actually designed this course, which fits into our master's program, but also fits into a non-degree executive education program that we could actually launch specifically with that market in mind. And it's quite interesting, really, because we're starting to develop personas from the people that are actually going into this course. And it's really, really excellent to be able to do it. Now, if you were to take either of these versions, then the presence thing is really, really important, which is the slide that Jen produced earlier. Now, the way I do it is to worry about the social presence first. So to actually join all this together, right at the start of the course, I do send out not one, but 2 emails. But the emails isn't just turn up. The email is actually saying, there's a discussion board there. Give us some information about you. And we structure that information. So, you know, what do you, if you were to describe yourself in 5 words, what would that be? If you are in a working situation, which a graduate would be, then what sort of job do you have? So in essence, they actually hit the discussion board and they share quite a lot of detail with us themselves. So that's the first point. And that's whether it's grad or whether it's non-degree. The second point is, and I don't know, have you got an opening discussion board that's live there, Tealia? Sorry, Jennifer?
Yeah, so let's go to the module page. If we open to the modules, and let's go back to lesson 2.
Lesson 1 right at the start. If you look at the intro page, you'll see that people share quite a lot of details of themselves. Yeah, there we are.
Right.
Is that live?
This is not a live course, no.
Okay, so the number of people, it's almost not mandatory, but I monitor that. And so this is for me to develop a little mini profile for each one of these people. And I look for common threads as well by the introductions. So who actually says that they all work in aviation, or maybe they're actually in a first-time leader role. I try and find some common threads related to that.
And Keith,
that, sorry?
How does that show up? So you use that welcome discussion board.
There we are.
Details. Yep.
What is your name? Do you have a nickname? What is your current occupation? What do you expect to gain from the course? So you can start to get some pretty good feedback just by watching them on the discussion board before I go live. And I think,
how does that trickle into the other discussion boards? Because we use discussion boards throughout the 4 weeks of this course. So now that you know that that person is in the aviation industry, right? And you go to, let's say, lesson 2.
Well, you see, this is where I start to group people with common interests.
Exactly.
So
talk about that.
So that's why the social bit is important first. I'm trying to get people to find touch points with other people.
Right.
And so I might, if I see 8 people from the aviation industry, I might send them an email and say, oi, do you know you're all working for the aviation industry? But so they can start using the discussion board as a mini forum. And so that builds as time goes on. With the first live session, I am armed with a lot of data about the people. Now, for this, we also use another trick that Jen and Tealia knows about. We try and actually look at something that they can discuss. So within this course is built Kolb's learning styles. Now, everybody in education knows this. They fill in a questionnaire, and I've got a very, very good feeling about, you know, how have I got 50% reflectors, etc. But then it's up to the discussion boards for me to discuss what reflectors are likely to react to in parts of the course. So now I'm armed in terms of proper preparation with 2 elements of knowledge. I know who are likely people to get on with each other because they have similar backgrounds. And I also probably know there's some commonality that I can talk about in terms of have we got a bunch of theorists here, or reflectors, or activists, or pragmatists. Now with this course, because I've got learning styles, I actually adjust the live sessions and the discussion boards accordingly as we go along. If we're dealing with the overseas market, there tends to be more reflectors, say in China, then therefore the discussion board discussions becomes more reflective. So you can see that in the end, I practice the 5 Ps, and it's very much to do 5 Ps, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And in those terms, if I am really focusing on the social side, then the personal side flows in. Because inevitably, as you can hear from my accent, I'm North Welsh, I will find somebody that's been to Wales. So there's a little common bridger there. I will find somebody that knows my old universities, Cranfield, etc.
Yes.
So therefore, I've got common threads that can start to build my personal, and then finally I use the instruction to itself affirm that I understand the subject matter that's being taught.
So Keith, I have to ask this quick question before we wrap this up. Is people, I know our audience is thinking, how much time does this take you? Like how much time do you invest a week for this particular course in terms of reading all the discussion boards and live facilitated sessions? How much time do you expend doing these things?
Up front, it's a bit of effort, but it's my 5 Ps thing. I do like to be prepared and know my audience, but I equally like the audience to know each other, which is the point of the opening discussion board. And the opening email as well. Once it's going, it tends to be actually we have the ability for them to email each other. We have the ability for them to actually discuss things on discussion boards. Then it becomes more of a monitoring role. Once I've established that in terms of instructional I am competent, then I can make remarks to their discussions on the discussion boards. Suddenly it takes a lot less time. To set up a new cohort of, say, 40 people on here, up front takes me a couple of hours. But that's because I've got the 5 Ps in place and I know the order in which I do stuff. And I also know that it's all about personal and it's all about social to start with. As you move into the course, it becomes more and more instructional because they are forming their informal relationships online. And so then it then takes less and less per day. I noticed one of the questions that came in is, do we stick in boundaries? I personally don't put in boundaries, but that's because I'm connected to my courses through my cell phone. And I can see when they are discussing things with each other, whether it is something that can wait for a couple of hours or whether I think I should jump on and quickly answer it straight away. And in those terms, it means that if I were to take that course individually, which we really didn't discuss very much, did we? If I take that course individually, then once it's running, it's 2 or 3 hours a week.
That's lovely. Nick, I think what we'll do too for our audience, we'll have Keith address or write out the 5 Ps. I think a lot of people are probably wanting, or they're trying to write those out really quickly, and we don't have a slide for that, but I think that's valuable information.
Let's do that. Great, Jen.
And I'll turn
Kolb as well. Learning styles is important on this.
Right. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Tealia. To recap a few things, we will be sending a video recording and the slides of this to all attendees after the event, and we'll include some information about Keith's 5 Ps in there. Hopefully those people who started this thinking that they or their particular institutions were at the more unprepared end of the scale will now feel just slightly more prepared. And we have another 2 events in this series coming up soon on the 18th of August and the 25th of August. So you can book onto those via the SUMS website, sums.org.uk/events, if you'd like to come to those. But let's attend to some of the questions. Keith has already touched on, I think, the most popular question that's come in through the chat here from Jane around out of office times and response times for students. You said, Keith, you don't personally set your own boundaries on that, but that things become somewhat self-policing after a while as the students start to respond to each other rather than going to you for everything.
Yeah, I try to be right at the start of each course. I try to actually have almost a 24/7 regime. Now that only goes on for the first 4 or 5 days while people are getting to know each other. And remember that you can't guarantee they all turn up at the same time. You know, in a classroom situation, then everybody comes in at 10 o'clock and leaves at 11. When you start a course, you'll discover that there are some, what I call early birds, that come in on the first morning and are very keen to discuss things. Other people might not join an online course until the 4th day. So you're spending some time in integrating them. So I don't have that. But as I said, if there's nothing urgent, I won't answer it. I just monitor it. And as Jen knows, I actually run at any given time up to 10 different courses that are going on. And I can quite effectively monitor it and decide for myself which has to be answered now, which can wait.
You have a etiquette document or something you use for students to sort of set expectations about how they should behave amongst themselves as a group online?
To be honest, no, I don't. But obviously I have the ability, we looked at a Canvas session there, I have the ability to delete anything immediately, which is why I find it's handy to have my cell phone. I've never actually had a situation when somebody has said something rude or out of order. So it's never happened to me in all the 7 courses and the 10 years I've been running this. But the reality is you build the etiquette through mainly the discussion boards. The first live session is really important as well, because you try and make it discursive as opposed to actually just talking at them. But by that time, you got the social clues. You know, this is the model of pest analysis. What do you think about a pest analysis for the aviation industry? I've got 8 people on here from aviation. So because of my proper preparation, I know who these people are a little tiny bit. I've got some things where I can glue them together. So it's really important at the start to have that preparation in place.
That emphasis on getting students to connect to each other is interesting. It strikes me that the sort of model you're suggesting for online education, it's rather like being the perfect dinner party host. You work in aviation, so you should meet so-and-so. And I'd never thought of it like that before. That's so fantastic. True.
Yeah, well, the only problem is I'd be hogging the port.
Another concern I think that comes up a lot was a question we had around if there are no marks given for participating in discussions, how do you ensure students actually do participate in those discussions?
You can never ever guarantee 100%. That's the first thing. All you can do is to remind them when the discussion is coming up as frequently as possible. As I repeat my matured courses, I have all these emails set up. So I don't have to write them every time. They're there on a flash disk. And so for each one of the courses as live session comes up, I will actually do a reminder a week before, a reminder a day before, and a reminder an hour before. But it's simply just clicking a button. So they get these 3 reminders. Even so, for most of the live discussions, which are not marked, I get anywhere between 40% and 70%. There'll always be reasons why they can't turn up. Some of them will actually say, sorry, I can't make it. I'm going to something tonight. Or, you know, I've got to go and babysit or something like that. But the more you get to know them, the more you get the honesty that comes through.
The reminders, the reminder emails there are interesting. Someone referred earlier to the sort of cadence of a course, and you lose some of that cadence and some of that scaffold when you move from in-person to online. But as we've mentioned earlier, you get it back in some other ways, like the use of something such as Teams or Google Docs for group projects.
Yes.
Gives a platform that they can use.
Yep.
Jen, did you want to come in on any of this?
Yeah, I wanted to just say too that when we are face to face, right, we're not working so hard at making things meaningful sometimes because we know we're going to see the student in class on site. But when we move online, we do absolutely have to work a lot harder as instructors to make sure that every assignment, every discussion board has meaning, has a reason. If you increase the meaningfulness of your assignments, you know, the purposefulness of your assignments and your activities and your assessments, your students will want to participate. That is just the nature of the beast with online. You have to increase the reason behind, or make it meaningful, make it enjoyable, make them want to come. And you have to just work harder sometimes than you would normally on ground. You have to work even harder to make that happen online.
Thanks, Jen. I don't know if you know the answer to this, or Tealia. Do the online learning platforms integrate with popular social media like WhatsApp or TikTok that are popular with the student demographic?
It honestly depends on the learning management system. I have not seen WhatsApp integrated into a learning management system or TikTok, but I know that you can share the links to, you know, to various video sites and all of that. So I'm not sure. You'd have to look at the LMS itself and in the settings. Most LMSs have a settings page where you can turn on different LTI integrations. And if there is an LTI integration available, it can go right in that LMS.
Right now, just to say, we're doing an experiment with Bisk where we're actually integrating LinkedIn into a series of learning events. Now that does mean that they have to one-click into the LinkedIn page, but this is to promote discussion across businesses. This is not degreed. This is senior managers talking to each other about the problems of COVID-19. And we're setting questions about how they lead differently, how they manage differently. They're seeing some segments, actually some segments from this course that you just saw. But what we're discovering is that managers don't mind using LinkedIn. They think it's their province more than TikTok or whatever. And so it's interesting that we will tell you next time we meet whether that experiment is starting to be successful, because that's go live right now. But we're mailing the segments of the course to around 600 managers. In our circumstance, top managers in supply chain industry globally. We're setting them questions. We're going to see if they actually respond to each other on LinkedIn.
Okay. The question from Peter Timpson was around the use of chatbots or artificial intelligence to manage student queries. So, hi Siri, when is my essay due? Do you know of any universities that are doing that in your experience in the US?
Well, I'm just not sure. Tealia, do you know if we're if that's a common experience? I have not heard that.
No, it's a dreaded HR system, isn't it, in most universities now?
Exactly.
So for, you know, students that are already on campus, then if they have a problem about, you know, is my room actually up to scratch or things like that, then there are chat boxes on MSU's platforms where they can go in and find the most basic things. When's the restaurant open tonight and things like that.
Right.
And that's all automatic and chatted. But to do with academic, I don't know of one.
I can imagine it would be rather more difficult from the academic side.
Yeah.
The queries wouldn't be nearly as basic. If there's one or two more questions, feel free to add anything to our participants in the chat. If not, I'll ask one last question, and then we'll have a quick reminder on the events coming up, and we'll leave it there. We've talked in today's event about live synchronous and also asynchronous. So asynchronous discussion boards or live teaching via Zoom calls. Could anyone just say a little bit about the balance between those and sort of which types of teaching work well live and what types of teaching work asynchronously? If you were planning an online course, how do you get the sort of balance of those right and decide which types of teaching go into which area?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really does come down to the personality of the instructor and the type of course, right? One of the challenges that on-ground faculty have is that if they have been used to a 50-minute on-ground, on-site lecture, like they stand in front of the classroom, they talk for 50 minutes, the assumption is that they have to do that very same thing in some fashion online, whether it's a 50-minute video lecture or it's a 50-minute live facilitated discussion. And I would say don't make that assumption. Most of our students do not want to just sit and get. They don't want the sit and get experience online. They want to consume information and content in a variety of ways. So take your 50-minute lecture, chunk it down into smaller bite sizes, whether those are video bites or live facilitated session bites. Break those up for your students so that they can enjoy the learning experience and have many opportunities to consume that information. And the balance between synchronous and asynchronous, like I said, it has to do with your content area and your personality. You definitely need the balance, but to Tealia's point about 30 minutes ago, please think about that live facilitated session. Don't assume that students just want to do a self-paced, self-guided course. They still want that learning experience with the instructor present and involved and engaged. And so 1 hour a week is probably sufficient for a live facilitated session.
Could I just add to that, that you mustn't think of them as separate experiences. You know, it's often that the live session is covering off what you're discovering in the discussion boards. It's true. Covering off what is really interesting to bunches of students on the discussion board. So in other words, you've got to have your core academic content there, but the way in which you deliver it could well be that it's all discussion board and no live session. But whatever you do, make it integrative, which is back to my 5 Ps, because it's really important that they all link together. Now, this doesn't take a lot, actually, once you're into the online mode, because you can actually feel how this is going to work. Yeah. And remember also that students learn differently, which is why we intentionally early on in this strategic management series that you just saw, we put in cold. Because if there are reflectors, don't force them. If they are activists, you know they're going to be over-talkers. So it's really important to understand your audience as well.
So that leads in nicely to our final question from Warren Donaldson. How do you determine what the learning styles of your audience are before you're creating a course?
To be honest, and this sounds a bit flip, we actually send them online a questionnaire. The reality is, they love filling in that questionnaire. It's non-threatening. There's nothing wrong about it. And so they love filling it in. And the opening discussion board on that course is partially to do with their learning styles. So they can start discussing with each other what it feels like to be a reflector, what it feels like to be a pragmatist. We have, through Bisk, we've got an online questionnaire. It's just a push button thing. It immediately gives them an answer at the end of it all. And it gives them some indicators of what a reflector feels like. And so it's just sending them a questionnaire. Now, we also have Myers-Briggs online and a number of other common profiles to do with people that we actually use throughout the courses. But it does mean that on day one in that course, that I know what their learning styles are before I even start the discussion boards, before I even do a live session.
Great. Thanks, Keith. Let's leave it there. If we could just have our last slide with the dates for the next events, and the URL is there for anyone who wishes to book onto those. So we'll be talking in 2 weeks' time around how do we ensure students achieve their potential, how do they progress and succeed during an online course. And then the week after that, on the 25th of August, we'll be talking about the sort of long-term opportunities for universities, what this might mean for a university's digital strategy and teaching strategy post-COVID-19. The next 2 events are on Tuesdays, whereas this event and the previous event were on a Wednesday. Thank you to all our speakers, and thank you also to all our participants. We've had a great number of participants and a lot of engagement and questions. I hope you found this useful. If you have, then please do come to the next events or suggest the next events to some of your colleagues. We'll follow up soon for you with a recording of the event today and with the slides and a little bit of extra info. And if you've got any questions, then please feel free to get in touch in response to that email. But today, for now, thank you very much.